The arena orbited a dying neutron star, because of course it did. Nothing quite said intergalactic spectacle, like staging a bloodsport tournament on the edge of gravitational absurdity. The star pulsed once every 30 seconds, sending out radiation spikes that would have vaporized any species not screened by 23 layers of bureaucracy and anti-radiation gel. The vendors still sold snacks. They always did. In the galactic tongue of high broadcast, the dual-headed slorks began their commentary, both mouths somehow arguing and agreeing simultaneously. "Welcome, glorious viewers," the left head chirped. "Regrettably, welcome," the right muttered. "It is the 37th annual Exemplar Clash, where mighty warriors risk their lives to legally void treaties. Or, more accurately, where the strong punch the weak until politics fall over." The camera, or whatever pandimensional orb handled visuals, swung wide to show the stands, a tapestry of species, philosophies, and metabolic temperatures. Some floated, some squelched. One civilization communicated exclusively through the scent of regret. Each section roared, or oozed excitement, as holographic betting panels flickered midair. At the center, Earth's atomic research and coordination nexus was reimagined as a stylized warzone set. Or perhaps it was just Thursday back on Earth. Concrete corridors. Faded hazard stripes. A working vending machine that would later prove crucial, though no one knew it yet. This was not merely a duel, it was a sanctioned, treaty-adjacent, diplomatic engagement. The Galactic Dominion had challenged Earth's sovereignty, not through war or subterfuge, but via cultural combat, a one-on-one match staged in a facsimile of an Earth facility under the pretentious guise of performance. The Dominion's champion, General Korthzal, would enter last. He always did. Built like a collapsing building and dressed like war had a fashion consultant, he had been genetically optimized for superiority and, unfortunately, narrative convenience. His victories were so numerous they were stored in compressed format. But before he entered, before the stomping and the hymns and the ritual sacrifice of a modestly sentient fruit, there was Ellie. Captain Eleanor Vance stood at the edge of the arena, unnoticed by most, utterly without fanfare. No banners. No chants. No backstory blared across frequencies. Just a woman in regulation black with a single rank pin and a loose braid, looking at a broken soda machine like it had personally offended her. She tilted her head, calculating angles. She wasn't trying to be dramatic. She was wondering if it was already out of order or just waiting for the gravity to flip. A blob creature hovered nearby, its translator wobbling. "You are Earth's champion?" it asked, not unkindly. "I am Earth's inconvenience," she replied. "They sent me because I make things regrettable." The blob blinked 3 times, a sign of admiration in its species, or perhaps indigestion. "But you are small." "So was the nuke in the briefcase," she said. "Size is for parades." Ellie had not volunteered. Earth's bureaucrats had selected her precisely because she didn't want to be selected. Her record was clean, her kill count disputed, and her disciplinary notes stored under encryption with an audio warning that simply said, "Don't." The camera orb drifted closer, scanning her for biographical overlays. None appeared. The interface flickered. Systems weren't quite sure what to do with her. Elsewhere, the Galactic Dominion shuttle landed in a burst of sound and sulfur. Korthzal disembarked, flanked by robed acolytes and 2 genetically minimized fans that wafted desert scents at him. Every step he took cracked the fabricated earth tiles. He posed, once, twice, again for emphasis. The crowd adored him. "Behold the dominator of the 17-legged war," cried the announcer's left head. "And alleged tax evader of the Kroth vortex," added the right. Korthzal towered, flexed, and let out a war cry so guttural it ruptured 3 eardrums and at least 1 marriage proposal in the front row. Ellie didn't flinch. She was too busy watching the way his left foot dragged. A half-second imbalance. Residual injury? Weak servos? Or an affectation? Time would tell. The central sphere floated down, projecting the combat rules in 1,000 languages, most of them passive-aggressive. No lethal force until first blood. No psychic scream loops. All strikes must be physical. No use of orbital mechanics for advantage. Ellie blinked slowly. That last one was new. A timer started. 30 seconds to engagement. She cracked her knuckles. Not for show. Her implants had a sync delay in cold environments. The motion helped. Behind her, Earth's ambassador, an overpromoted think tank intern named Kieran, wrung their hands. Ellie, just don't provoke him. If we can end this with minimal humiliation. Minimal? She asked. Relatively speaking. She gave him a small, tight smile. Don't worry. If I lose, I'll lose spectacularly. You'll get sympathy treaties. Maybe even a bailout. He swallowed hard. And if you win? Her smile faded. Then they'll rewrite the rulebook. The arena shifted. Gravity flickered. The crowd leaned in. A hyperslug from a distant system vomited in suspense. Korthzal raised his arms, roaring again. His voice activated several subharmonic frequencies that made Ellie's teeth ache. She took one step forward, then stopped. What? The announcer's left head said, voice rising. She's walking the wrong way, the right added. Indeed, Ellie had turned, calmly, and walked to the far wall of the atomic lab replica. She examined a console, tapped it twice, found what she was looking for. A loose access panel. She pried it off and pulled something small and dusty from inside, a half-charged power cell, still warm. She pocketed it. Delay tactics? Asked the left. She's stalling. Clever, but pitiful, mocked the right. But Ellie had already turned back, walking now toward the center ring. Not rushed. Not afraid. Just deliberate. She arrived as the timer hit 0. Korthzal lunged forward, an explosion of black armor and red mist. The floor quaked. Ellie ducked. There was no counterstrike. Not yet. She rolled sideways, pivoted off a support beam, and landed behind him, 10 feet from where she'd started. No flare. No speech. Just breathing. Focused, even. The crowd made confused noises. The camera tried to zoom on her face. Her expression was unreadable. And yet, there was a flicker in her eye. Not fear. Geometry. As the second lunge came, she raised one hand, not in defense, but in timing. Calculating. The screen went black for a moment. A dramatic pause coded into the broadcast algorithm. Then, one word from the commentator's right head. Interesting. And that was the problem. Because once humans became interesting, they stopped being underestimated. And once they stopped being underestimated, well, then the rules stopped mattering. Ellie Vance didn't wake up angry. That required energy. She preferred to start her mornings in a state of quiet calculation, like a sniper waiting for the wind to confess its intentions. Anger implied emotional investment. She was well past that. What she felt as the locker room lights buzzed overhead, on a delay, of course, was something far colder, clarity. The locker had tried to eat her pants again. That made 3 times this cycle. The AI assigned to optimize Earth combatant readiness had been programmed with too much enthusiasm and not enough sarcasm comprehension. So when Ellie muttered, "You hungry, tin box?" last time, it began reclassifying clothing as nutritional input. "Stop," she said firmly as the locker's edges whirred, contemplating another snack. It hissed, folded open, spat her boots onto the floor in what could only be described as passive-aggressive compliance. She dressed without ceremony. Lightweight armor, black on black, matte finish. Her braid was military regulation but just slightly longer than it should be. A small act of rebellion. The only one she allowed herself. Across the room, a mirror flickered into operation, casting back her reflection with the flattering deceit of Galactic standard lighting. She looked like someone halfway through a bad decision and fully capable of surviving it. Her eyes were calm, sharp. Her mouth, unreadable. She studied herself like a stranger. Better that way. The door creaked open behind her. A long shadow stretched across the floor, her handler, or rather, Earth's junior diplomatic envoy, Kieran Halden. He wore nervousness like a scent. It clung to his collar. "You're not supposed to be suiting up yet," he said. "Then I must be hallucinating," Ellie replied, strapping a plasma sheath to her thigh. "Because I definitely am." He cleared his throat. "We still have 12 minutes until the official ceremonial insult exchange. There's a protocol." "There's always a protocol," she said. "And yet here you are, watching me break it." She turned to face him fully. He looked away too quickly. Diplomats weren't trained to make eye contact with people like her. Soldiers with incident files sealed so deep they required 2 blood samples and a minor bribe to access. "They're still finalizing the betting matrix," Kieran said, holding out a datapad. "Your odds have shifted. Worse." "Good," Ellie replied. "Good. No one bets against a sure thing. Let them sleepwalk into embarrassment." He flinched at that word. Embarrassment. Earth couldn't afford that. Not here, not now. The exemplar clash wasn't just about combat, it was symbolic leverage. A single victory could push trade routes into new hands, overturn decades of bureaucratic pettiness, and grant humanity access to tech they were not yet responsible enough to handle, according to the same species who thought weaponized gravity puns were a good idea. Kieran shifted his weight. General Korthzal has trained in 57 combat theaters. His neural link is upgraded every 9 weeks. His reflex loop is supposedly faster than a photon's second guess. Ellie stared at him. "I'm saying he's dangerous," he added lamely. "I assumed you were listing his insecurities," she said, and brushed past him. In the hallway beyond, the air smelled like oil, ozone, and old metal. The walls thrummed with energy, literal and political. Every inch of this facility, from the flickering gravity panels to the overpriced vending machine, had been scanned, modified, and ceremonialized to simulate Earth's prized atomic research nexus. It was a deeply unflattering tribute. The lighting was wrong. The proportions off. The coffee machine hadn't even been programmed to sigh. She passed 2 security drones whispering in binary. One paused mid-hover to glance at her, if one could call radar pulses a glance. She didn't wave. She never waved. The problem with Ellie wasn't that she was unlikable. The problem was that she didn't care whether she was liked. And in a galactic arena where charm often mattered more than threat displays, that made her very hard to market. A bored janitor monk from the Silicate Order blinked 4 eyes at her as she passed. She nodded. He nodded back. Respect among those who clean up after explosions. Inside her head, the old implant pulsed once. Just a reminder. Temperature fluctuation in the arena predicted at -4 Celsius. Good for reaction speed, bad for joints. Ellie ran diagnostics, eyes flicking right, confirming readouts. No fancy upgrades. No flashy mods. She didn't need them. What she needed was timing, leverage, and 10 seconds of inattentiveness from her opponent. Korthzal wouldn't give her 10. She might have to settle for 2. A hiss opened the door to the weapons prep room. She ignored most of it. Overcomplicated designs, energy weapons too delicate for real work. She selected a combat staff. Weighted. Balanced. Honest. A technician eyed her suspiciously. "That's a training model." "I know. There are more advanced options." "I know." She took the staff anyway. Wielded it once. It whistled through the air, perfect in its simplicity. No circuits to fry. No permissions to revoke. "Your funeral," the tech muttered. "No," Ellie said. "His." The countdown reached 7 minutes. In the viewing decks above, alien dignitaries began arriving. Sashes, skin suits, feathers, and whatever the hell the Ornact ambassador was wearing, possibly alive. Murmurs swelled as they saw the human combatant. No armor enhancements. No visible weapons. No dramatics. She stood at the platform's edge, looking at the arena like it was a crossword she intended to finish before coffee. A floating journalist pod hovered too close, blinking in several colors. Captain Vance. A few pre-battle thoughts for our 5-dimensional audience. She stared into its lens. Yes. Silence. Well, what are they? That was one of them. The pod blinked in flustered chartreuse and floated off. From above, Kieran watched with both awe and dread. Ellie wasn't playing by the unspoken rules. No performance. No declaration. Not even a warm-up fight. She was treating this entire event like it annoyed her, and somehow that unnerved the audience more than Korthzal's thunderous preamble. Inside the arena, the artificial Earth terrain shimmered. The atomic lab set had been engineered for dramatic historical resemblance, which mostly meant someone Googled nuclear bunker and then added more sparks. Ellie had walked it once the night before, in the quiet hours. She'd found 3 weaknesses in the floor plating, 2 blind corners in the security feed, and 1 vending machine with an unshielded feedback loop. Now, she crouched near the edge of the entrance and opened her palm. A tiny chip, barely the size of a nail, rested there, flickering softly. Not illegal. Not even weaponized. But inconvenient. She slipped it into the staff space, tapped it twice. It hummed in harmony with her neural rhythm. Across the arena, the ground shook. The Dominion side door cracked open as something massive approached. A voice crackled in her ear. Kieran's. Ellie. Last call. You sure about this? No backup, no tactical uplink, no adrenaline boosters. She responded calmly. Kieran. Yes. Tell Earth's delegation to update their treaties. Why? Because in about 15 minutes, the galaxy's going to realize humans aren't interesting. A pause. They're problematic. The arena recalibrated itself with a mechanical groan, like an ancient beast trying to remember why it hadn't collapsed yet. Its perimeter flickered with containment fields designed by a committee of lawyers and sadists. Above, the artificial ceiling shimmered with starlight so convincing it had once fooled a Terran ambassador into drafting an entire treaty under the assumption it was night. It wasn't. The stars were purely decorative. But the consequences had been very real. As the final preparations ticked down, the atmosphere shifted. Not the literal one, though that too, cycling subtly between breathable presets to disorient species with slower hemoglobin, but the emotional climate. The kind of hush that comes when the wealthy start rearranging their bets. Ellie stood at the center of it, an interruption in the ritual. No theme music. No banners. No accompanying entourage with ceremonial spears or genetically optimized parrots. Just her. A lone Terran in matte black armor that seemed to drink light instead of reflect it, holding a blunt practice staff and chewing very slightly on the inside of her cheek. Across the arena, seismic vibrations announced the arrival of her opponent. Korthzal did not walk. He descended. The ramp from the Dominion cruiser extended like the tongue of a mechanical god, and down it came the general, 12 feet tall in his ceremonial obsidian exosuit, each segment carved with victories, citations, and vaguely threatening poetry. His 6 arms moved in careful synchrony, 2 of them clasped in mock humility, the rest flexing with deeply practiced indifference. He was flanked by a trio of standard-bearers genetically engineered for symmetry, and a priest drone humming a psalm that could only be heard by beings capable of regretting their ancestors' choices. Korthzal stopped 3 meters from Ellie and lowered his eyes, just enough to appear noble, just not enough to suggest weakness. His voice emerged from both his mouth and a subdermal speaker system. I accept your challenge, human, though I do not understand it. Ellie blinked slowly. You accepted a diplomatic duel with Earth. That's literally what we're doing here. I meant you. His tone was courteous, almost bored. They sent you. She glanced at him, mildly annoyed. They also sent me to a summit in Orion 5 with a fever and a broken translator. I still walked out with more territory than I walked in with. He gave a low rumble of acknowledgement, something between laughter and tectonic commentary. Then let us hope you can negotiate with pain. Behind them, the announcers came alive. Ladies, gentle things, and multi-body entities, we begin the final rituals before sanctioned impact, chirped the Slork twins. Let the terms be reviewed, and the excuses pre-written, added the right head. Above the arena, a shimmering contract unfurled in the air, written in 37 legal languages and 2 interpretive dances. A voice recited the rules in a tone designed to discourage interruption. No fatal blows before first injury. No use of temporal redundancy. All weapons must be observable by third-party sensors. No invoking the names of gods that have not registered copyrights. Arena gravity will shift randomly at intervals, favoring no side. This was, in fact, a lie. Ellie noted the final clause. The gravity algorithm was Dominion-coded. Their warriors trained in vertical combat, Earth's didn't. She filed it away. Do you require ritual declarations? Korthzal asked, flexing one of his 4 combat arms in an unnecessarily complex motion. No, Ellie replied, examining a loose bolt on the floor. But I'm fine if you want to monologue. His eyes narrowed. You mock the right. I mock the need for it. He straightened. Then I will honor you with a quick end. See, she said, now you're just threatening efficiency. I like that. Up in the stands, murmurs swelled. Diplomats from over a dozen systems leaned forward. The odds were shifting again. The betting AI tried to recalculate outcomes based on Ellie's body language, but it flagged her as emotionally opaque and defaulted to 5,000:1 against her survival. The arena's walls contracted slightly, drawing the ring tighter. A line of light traced the edge. All motion outside the boundary would be considered a retreat, tantamount to forfeiture. One of the Ornact observers began drooling in anticipation. Ellie rolled her shoulders once. Her implants whispered timing data in the back of her brain. Heart rate, ambient temperature, pulse delay from the arena's inner rings. She didn't look ready. She looked bored. That was her advantage. The floor beneath them vibrated as the signal beacon dropped into the arena. It was shaped like a staff, too, though taller, etched in gold, humming faintly. The combat would begin the moment either combatant struck it. The Dominion called it the Staff of Reckoning. Earth called it the Gong on a Stick. Korthzal took one step forward. Ellie didn't. Is this your final position? He asked. No, she said. But it's yours. He snarled. Arrogance. No, she corrected. Geometry. He didn't understand. He didn't need to. Around the arena, atmospheric pressure shifted. A cosmetic feature, meant to heighten drama. Ellie ignored it. She was listening to something else, the pacing of the field emitters embedded under Quadrant 7. One had pulsed slightly slower than the others, perhaps due to heat, perhaps wear. Quadrant 7B. Weak spot confirmed. Begin, the arena AI intoned, startling even itself with the abruptness. Korthzal surged forward in a blur of muscle and ceremony, all 6 limbs tightening like blades. He moved with confidence carved from centuries of dominance. Ellie did not meet him. She spun sideways, tapping the signal beacon as she pivoted, triggering the official start. He missed her by a clean meter. His weight slammed into empty space, floor plating denting beneath his feet. The crowd roared. A calculated dodge, the Slorks gasped. Or she tripped artfully, the right head muttered. Korthzal turned, surprised by her lack of engagement. He adjusted. The floor rotated, a slow grind under their feet as gravity shifted 3 degrees off-axis. Ellie rebalanced like she'd known it was coming. She probably had. They circled. He moved with intention. She moved like she was solving a puzzle. You do not strike, Korthzal growled. You haven't made a mistake yet, she said. I'm waiting. That made him pause. Just long enough. She stepped back, one precise pace, directly onto 7B. He lunged. The floor glitched. Not visibly. Not catastrophically. Just subtly. Enough for half a breath of lost balance. Enough to ruin perfection. Ellie moved. Not a leap. Not a flourish. Just a half spin and a jab, her staff tapping his lower knee joint. A harmless strike. Except it wasn't. The pressure and angle activated the chip she'd embedded earlier. A feedback loop pulsed up the staff, into the general's own neural relays. Not enough to damage. Just enough to interrupt. Like static on a divine channel. Korthzal jerked backward, stunned. The crowd gasped. No blood. No foul. But something had cracked. His rhythm. The announcers said nothing. Even they needed a moment. Ellie raised her staff and tapped the floor once. Not as a challenge. Not as a threat. As if to say, I've mapped the whole thing. You're already inside the trap. And I haven't even started yet. The first real blow came from Quetzal, a downward hammer swing from his dominant left arm that carried enough kinetic energy to detonate a small hovercraft. It struck nothing but air. Ellie had already sidestepped, letting the momentum carry him forward, like a meteor missing its mark. The floor trembled with the force of his impact. Cracks laced the faux concrete. One of the spectators gasped in 3 languages. She didn't counter. Not yet. Timing was a predator, and she let it stalk. Quetzal turned sharply, forearms raised, 2 flexing reflexively. His breathing was steady, but there was a shift now, not in speed, but in expectation. She should have been broken by now. She should have at least screamed. Instead, she adjusted her grip on the training staff and blinked once. Coolly. The arena's gravity pitched again, 5 degrees toward Quadrant 3. Ellie flowed with it. Quetzal resisted it. That was mistake 2. She let him chase her, across simulated reactor coils, beneath low-slung piping that hummed with ambient power. To the crowd, it looked like she was retreating. The Dominion ambassador smirked. Wagers adjusted. Cameras zoomed. The AI resumed counting her likelihood of survival in negative percentages. She vaulted over a railing and landed lightly in the lab's secondary platform, behind a bank of glowing consoles. Quetzal followed, explosive and heavy. His foot caught on the slight incline of the platform's edge, engineered for cable drainage, overlooked by most. Ellie knew it by heart. She spun as he lunged. Her staff whipped around, not toward his torso, but the gap between 2 armor plates along his hip joint. A hollow strike. A whisper of force. But his step faltered. He growled. Stop dodging. She didn't answer. She didn't need to. He wanted a brawl. She gave him a mathematics problem. Quetzal recalibrated. His 4 lower limbs rotated, claws flexing. He'd switched stances, his Krell form, favored in heavy gravity, optimal for frontal destruction. His next strike came with terrifying force, arms arcing in a synchronized blur, augmented by microtorque coils embedded in his exosuit. Ellie let the first strike graze her shoulder. Pain flared, sharp and bright. She needed that. A reminder of speed, of error. A burst of blood marked the moment. Now the rules changed. First injury had been drawn. Fatal strikes were authorized. The crowd, sensing this shift, surged with noise. The announcers broke into overlapping declarations. Blood is called. Blood is called. One screamed. May the silence now be broken by ruin, the other added, almost gleeful. Ellie ducked another blow and darted beneath a hanging conduit. Her movements weren't flashy. They were efficient. Every pivot minimized her profile. Every parry stole momentum. She began to circle him, tightening the spiral. Quetzal, confused, tried to widen the distance, but the arena's layout betrayed him. The old lab design hemmed him in. Ellie had mapped it. She wasn't improvising. This was choreography. Brutal ballet. She whispered to her staff, activated the chip again. Quetzal took a step. The moment his foot compressed the weakened flooring near Quadrant 7, a pulse of electromagnetism surged through his armor. Not enough to injure. Enough to delay his neural relay. Enough to slow a thought. Ellie struck. First, his side joint, again. Then, his left knee. Then, his shoulder. Not to break, but to confuse. The crowd fell into an eerie hush. It was too surgical to be lucky. Too fluid to be desperate. Then she stepped in. Close enough to smell the ionized metal of his armor. Close enough that a single wrong twitch would cave her skull. And still she didn't flinch. Prediction loop is broken, she said, quietly. He blinked. What? She struck his throat. No force, just placement. His jaw seized. His breath hitched. You've been fighting probability. I'm fighting the code that writes it. He swung wild, a broad haymaker, pure rage. She ducked beneath it, pivoted around his back, and landed a single devastating blow at the base of his spine with the butt of her staff. Korthzal froze. Not dramatically. Not heroically. His body locked with a terrifying stillness. His muscles engaged, but they refused to move. Ellie had struck the precise point where Dominion neural routing intersected with spinal command feedback. A design flaw. Unpatched. Because no one had ever lasted long enough to find it before. He dropped to one knee. Slowly. Mechanically. The crowd remained frozen, confused. Silence stretched. Then the Slorks whispered, unsure. Has the match concluded? The arena AI, uncertain for the first time in its history, reran the last 10 seconds in slow motion. Ellie stood still, breathing. Blood ran down her arm. Korthzal knelt. Not in surrender. Not by choice. Because physics had betrayed him. And she had introduced it to the equation. In the Dominion box, one diplomat stood, horrified. A second raised a translator device, scanning for signs of foul play. None. The rules had been followed. No enhancers. No outside force. Just timing. Geometry. And the quiet malice of a woman who'd been told not to try. The betting AI crashed trying to reconcile the outcome. Earth's odds were now listed as infinity. 1. Which several mathematicians filed lawsuits over. Ellie turned to the audience. Not to bask. To make a point. She tapped her staff against the floor once. It echoed. I would like Earth's treaty rights restored, she said, evenly. And a functioning vending machine. The silence was immediate and total. Then, someone, maybe a diplomat, maybe a janitor, began to clap. Others joined. A slow, rising, awkward applause that no one quite understood but felt compelled to continue. The Slorks screamed. A Terran victory. A diplomatic impossibility. A statistical obscenity. Korthzal collapsed fully. His systems were still live. But his will had been extracted. Ellie walked from the arena without looking back. As she crossed the threshold, Kieran met her, eyes wide, words caught somewhere between awe and panic. How did you? She dropped the training staff into his hands. Update your treaties. But the galaxy just saw. Yes, she said. And now they'll wonder. She kept walking, down the corridor, past the dumbfounded guards and whispering diplomats. Behind her, the Galactic Order trembled slightly. Sometimes, it only took one good punch. And the right math.